The fabric of my wedding dress was supposed to be a memory keeper, a repository for the scent of my husband's cologne. When he pulled me close, the phantom touch of my father's hand as he walked me down the aisle, the ghost of a champagne bubble that might have fizzed against the silk. It was meant to hold the joy of that day. Instead, it held a stain, a deep visceral slash of crimson, like an open wound against the pristine white. It held the evidence of a betrayal so sharp, so personal, it threatened to unravel not just the dress, but me, along with it. My sister-in-law Jessica had always been a ghost at the feast of my happiness, a shadow lurking just at the edge of every bright moment I shared with her brother Liam. When Liam and I first started dating, she called me his little project. When we moved in together, she gifted us a hideous lamp she knew I'd hate, then acted wounded when I didn't display it prominently. She was the master of the backhanded compliment, the queen of the thinly veiled insult. "Oh, Chloe, you're so brave to wear your hair like that," she'd say, her smile as tight as a drum. Liam, bless his heart, was blind to it. "That's just Jess," he'd say with a shrug. "She has a weird sense of humor, but she means well." He saw his sister through a filter of shared childhood memories and familial duty. I saw her through a lens of ever-mounting evidence. The little digs, the forgotten invitations, the way she'd look at me when Liam wasn't watching, a flat, cold assessment that always made the hairs on my arms stand up. So, when I saw my dress, I didn't have to wonder what happened. I knew. It was hours into the reception, after the speeches and the first dance. I'd gone to our bridal suite to touch up my makeup and swap my heels for flats, and there it was, hanging on the back of the door where I'd left it, a masterpiece of lace and silk, desecrated, a glass of what could only be red wine, upturned on the floor beneath it, the dregs still clinging to the carpet. But it was more than a spill. Along the intricate beating of the hip was a tear, not a snag, a tear, deliberate and cruel. My breath caught in my throat, a painful, jagged thing. The room tilted. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on the ruin of my dress. It wasn't just a dress. It was the one my mother, who we lost to cancer 5 years ago, had helped me pick out online before she passed. She'd circled it on a printout with a weak hand and whispered, "This one, sweetie, this one is you." Tears I didn't know I was holding back began to fall, hot and furious. A knock came at the door, and Jessica's voice, syrupy, sweet, called out, "Chloe, everyone's asking where you are. Is everything okay?" I couldn't answer. I was choking on the irony. She pushed the door open, her eyes immediately finding the dress. Her hand flew to her mouth in a perfect pantomime of shock. "Oh my God," she gasped. "Chloe, what happened?" She rushed to my side, her expression a careful mask of concern. But I saw it, just for a second, a flicker of something triumphant in her eyes. And I knew with a certainty that settled deep and cold in my bones. It was her. It must have been one of the staff, Jessica insisted, her arm around my shoulders in a mockery of comfort. "Someone cleaning up, they must have knocked it over by accident." Her words were a soothing balm intended to poison. She was already crafting the narrative, the one where this was all a tragic, clumsy mistake. Liam burst in moments later, his face etched with worry. "Chloe, honey, what's wrong?" His eyes followed mine to the dress, and a low curse escaped his lips. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands. They were trembling. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "We think it was an accident," Jessica said quickly, answering for me. "Someone must have come in here and—" I finally found my voice, and it was rough with unshed tears. "It wasn't an accident," I whispered, looking straight at Liam, trying to will him to see, to understand. I couldn't. Look at her. If I looked at her, I would scream. Liam's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He looked from me to his sister, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. He wanted the simple answer, the easy explanation, the one that didn't involve the monstrous possibility that his own sister could be capable of such calculated cruelty. "The tear, Liam," I said, my voice gaining a sliver of strength. "A glass falls, it spills. It doesn't tear fabric like that." I pointed to the jagged rip along the hip. "That's not a snag. That's a pull. A hard one." Jessica scoffed, a delicate, dismissive sound. "Oh, Chloe, you're just upset. It probably caught on the corner of the table when it fell." She was so good, so plausible. She offered easy outs, comfortable lies that would smooth over the ugliness. Liam's gaze softened with pity, and my heart broke a little. Moy wasn't looking at me like I was his wife, his partner. He was looking at me like I was a hysterical woman, overwrought on an emotional day. "Honey, let's not jump to conclusions," he said gently, stroking my hair. "We'll figure it out. The hotel will pay for it. We'll get it fixed. Don't let this ruin our night. Don't let this ruin our night." The words echoed in the silent room. The damage was so much deeper than the dress. It was in the chasm opening between me and my new husband, a chasm his sister had just dug, and was now trying to furnish with plausible deniability. I let him lead me out of the room. I let Jessica fuss over me, her touch like ice against my skin. I pasted a fragile smile on my face and returned to my own wedding reception, a ghost in a borrowed cocktail dress the hotel had provided. I danced with my husband. I laughed with our friends, but with every step, every toast, every beat of the music, a single thought hardened inside me, crystallizing from grief and rage into something solid and sharp. I am going to prove it. The days after the wedding were a blur of forced normalcy. We unpacked gifts, wrote thank you cards, and navigated the strange, new landscape of being married. But the crimson stain on my dress had bled into our new life. It was a silent, screaming presence in our apartment. Liam, true to his word, had tried to fix it. He'd filed a complaint with the hotel, which had profusely apologized and offered to pay for the cleaning and repair. They assured us it was a terrible accident, a mishap with a careless staff member during turndown service, and that was that. For Liam, the case was closed. He wanted to move on, to step into the bright, sunlit future we had planned, but I couldn't. I was tethered to the truth of what happened in that room. "She's lying, Liam," I said one night, as we were getting ready for bed. The dress, now in a protective garment bag, was a funereal monolith in the corner of our bedroom. He sighed, the sound heavy with a wariness that was becoming familiar. "Chloe, please, can we just let it go? The hotel took responsibility. My sister feels terrible about what happened." "She feels terrible that I know," I countered, my voice tight. "She didn't even call me once to see how I was. She just texted you, asking if I'd calmed down yet. She doesn't know what to say," he said, his voice rising in frustration. "You've made it clear you blame her, and she's hurt." Hurt? The word was so absurd, so grotesquely out of place, that I almost laughed. "She's not hurt, Liam. She's acting. This is what she does. She creates chaos and then plays the victim when she's called out on it. How can you not see it?" "What I see," he said, turning to face me, his jaw set, "is that you've disliked my sister since day one. And now you're twisting this unfortunate accident into some grand conspiracy to fit your narrative. It's not fair to her, it's not fair to me." His words were a physical blow. He was defending her. Even now, he was choosing her narrative over mine. He was telling me I was crazy, not in so many words, but the implication was there, hanging in the air between us. "You're irrational. You're paranoid. You're imagining things. A conspiracy," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. "You really think I'm making this up?" He raked a hand through his hair. "I think you're upset, and you're looking for someone to blame. And Jessica has always been an easy target for you." That was it. That was the moment I knew I was completely on my own in this. He wouldn't be my ally. He couldn't be. He was trapped in the web of loyalty and shared history she had so expertly woven. If I wanted the truth to come out, I wouldn't just be fighting her. I'd be fighting the man I loved, too. I turned away from him, pulling the covers up to my chin. The bed felt vast and cold. "Fine," I said to the wall. "You're right. I'll drop it." It was a lie. Of course. I wasn't dropping it. I was just going underground. My investigation began with the subtlety of a whisper. I couldn't risk Liam knowing, couldn't bear another argument where he looked at me with that heartbreaking mixture of pity and frustration. So I worked during the day while he was at his architecture firm. Our apartment became my incident room. My first step was to call my maid of honor, Sarah. She was a lawyer, pragmatic and observant. "Tell me everything you remember about Jessica at the reception," I said, pacing my living room. "Jess," Sarah said. "Let's see. She was being well, Jessica. She made that weird toast about how Liam was always chasing shiny things, and she was glad he'd finally caught one." We all kind of looked at each other like, did she just call Chloe an object? I winced, remembering I'd blocked that out. What else? She was hovering, a lot, especially around the bridal suite. I remember Thinking it was odd, around 9 p.m., I went to grab my purse from the suite, and she was standing in the hallway, just outside the door. She jumped when she saw me. My heart started beating faster. What did she say? She said she was just stretching her legs, but she looked flustered, guilty, almost. She asked me what I was doing, and I said I was getting my purse. She made a big show of saying, "Oh, don't let the bride see the mess in there. She'll have a fit," which was also weird, because the room was perfectly tidy. A mess in there. She was planting a seed, creating a pretext. "Sarah, what time was this?" I asked, grabbing a pen and paper. "Around 9, maybe 9:15, because I remembered the DJ started playing that Bruno Mars song right after, and I wanted to get back out there. I remembered going to the suite myself at around 10:30 p.m. That gave her a window, a whole hour where she could have slipped in. But how could I prove she was the one who spilled the wine? My mind raced. The wine, it was a specific, deep, berry red Cabernet. The wedding venue had served a different, lighter Merlot. I knew this because I had spent a month on wine tastings, agonizing over the perfect pairings. The Cabernet was Jessica's favorite. I'd seen her drink it 100 times. She always brought her own good stuff too. Family dinners, claiming what we served was undrinkable. I called the wedding coordinator at the hotel. After 5 minutes of pleasantries, I got to the point. "I had a quick question about the bar service," I said, trying to sound casual. "Did anyone order or bring a specific bottle of Cabernet, deep red, maybe from the Napa region?" The coordinator, a woman named Maria, was hesitant. "Ma'am, our policy is very strict about outside beverages." "I know," I said quickly. "It's just, a guest mentioned it, and I was curious." There was a pause, the rustle of papers. "You know," she said, her voice lowering slightly, "it's funny you should ask. One of the bartenders did mention something. He said a woman, a guest in a green dress, was quite insistent. She had her own bottle and demanded a glass for it. He told her it was against policy, but she made a terrible fuss. Said it was a special vintage, and that the bride and groom wouldn't mind. He eventually gave in because he didn't want to cause a scene." A green dress. Jessica had worn a floor-length emerald green gown. I felt a surge of cold triumph. "And this woman," I said, my voice barely a whisper, "do you know who she was?" He said she was the groom's sister. He remembered her from the family photos. Bingo. I hung up the phone, my hand shaking. I had a motive. I had a timeline. I had the weapon. It was all circumstantial, of course. Liam would still call it a string of coincidences. I needed something more, something he couldn't deny, something visual, and then it hit me. A memory from our venue tour. Maria, the coordinator, had pointed it out with pride. "We have top-of-the-line security," she'd said, gesturing to a tiny, almost invisible dome on the ceiling of the main hallway. "Cameras cover all public areas and corridors for our guests' safety." The hallway, the one right outside my bridal suite. The hallway where Sarah had seen a guilty-looking Jessica lurking. My heart hammered against my ribs. The proof might exist. I just had to get my hands on it. Getting the security footage was like trying to extract a state secret. My first call to Maria was met with a polite but firm wall of corporate policy. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Harrison, but we can only release security footage with a formal request from law enforcement." "But it's not a police matter," I argued, trying to keep the desperation out of my voice. "It's a personal matter. I just need to see who was in the hallway outside my suite between 9 and 10 p.m. "I understand, but our hands are tied. It's a matter of privacy for our other guests," she said, her voice full of practiced regret. Tried a different tactic. I told her about the dress, about what it meant to me, about my mother. I didn't accuse anyone. I just framed it as wanting peace of mind. I laid the emotion on thick, my voice cracking at just the right moments. It felt manipulative and ugly, but I was past caring about the niceties. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Let me see what I can do," Maria said finally, her professional armor showing the slightest chink. "I can't promise anything, and I definitely can't give you a copy. But, if you were to come by tomorrow, say around 2 p.m. when my manager is at lunch, I might be able to let you view the archives for that hallway. Just for a few minutes." "Thank you," I breathed, relief washing over me. "Thank you so much." The next day, I told Liam I was meeting Sarah for lunch. The lie sat like a stone in my stomach, but it was a necessary weight. I drove to the hotel, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The entire plan felt insane. What if I was wrong? What if the camera angle showed nothing? What if Liam was right, and I really was just a paranoid woman chasing shadows? The doubt was a cold poison, but the memory of Jessica's triumphant eyes pushed me forward. Maria met me in the lobby, her expression nervous. She led me through a series of back hallways to a small, windowless security office. The air was stale and cool, smelling of electronics. A bank of monitors showed silent, grayscale images of empty ballrooms and corridors. "Okay," she whispered, sitting down at a computer. "The archives are kept for 7 days. You're lucky you called when you did. Which camera?" "The one in the West Wing corridor, 3rd floor," I said, my voice tight. "Outside the Rose Suite." She typed quickly. A calendar appeared on the screen. She clicked the date of my wedding. A timeline from midnight to midnight appeared. "You said between 9 and 10 p.m. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. She dragged the cursor to 9 p.m. and hit play. The screen changed to show the hallway I remembered. Lifeless, in black and white. The door to my suite was on the left. I watched as blurry figures of guests walked past. The minutes ticked by in fast forward. 9:05, 9:10, and then, at 9:14 p.m., a figure stopped directly in front of my door, a woman in a long dress. Even in the grainy footage, I recognized the emerald green. It was Jessica. My breath hitched. Maria said nothing, her eyes glued to the screen. Jessica stood there for a long moment, looking up and down the empty hallway. Then, Sarah appeared from the end of the hall. I saw the jump, the quick, flustered movement Sarah had described. They exchanged a few words I couldn't hear, and Sarah walked away. Jessica waited. She waited a full 2 minutes, her body tense. She looked down the hall one more time. Then, she reached into the small purse she was carrying. She pulled out a bottle. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was the bottle of Cabernet. She quickly unscrewed the cap, then tried the handle of my suite door. It was unlocked. Of course it was. I'd been in and out all day. She slipped inside. "Oh my God," Maria breathed beside me. The door remained closed for 47 seconds. 47 seconds that stretched into an eternity. I imagined what was happening inside. The uncorking of the wine, the deliberate pour, the cruel, final tear of the fabric. My stomach roiled. The door opened again. Jessica slipped out empty-handed now. She scanned the hallway once more, a quick, furtive glance, before smoothing her dress and walking calmly away, disappearing from the frame. I stared at the empty hallway on the screen. The image burned into my brain. I was right. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right. A wave of nausea and vindication washed over me in equal measure. I turned to Maria, my eyes wild. "I need that," I said, my voice a raw whisper. "Please, I need a copy of that." She looked torn, her face pale. She had seen it too. She knew what it meant. She chewed on her lip, her gaze darting towards the door of the office. "I can't," she whispered. "I'll lose my job." "He thinks I'm insane," I pleaded, tears finally breaking free and streaming down my face. "My husband, he doesn't believe me. He thinks I'm making it up. Please, you saw what she did." Maria looked at the screen, at the ghost of Jessica's betrayal, still hanging in the digital air. She took a deep breath. "Give me your phone," she said, her voice firm, "and turn your back." I did as she said, fumbling to hand her my phone. I heard a series of clicks, the sound of a video playing, the hum of a phone recording a screen. It took less than a minute. She pressed the phone back into my hand. "It's not great quality, but it's there," she said quietly. "Now go, before my manager gets back." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, clutching my phone like a lifeline. As I walked out of the hotel and into the blinding sunlight, I didn't feel joy. I felt cold. I had the proof, but the proof was a weapon, and now I had to decide how to use it. For 3 days, the video lived on my phone, a toxic secret. Every time I looked at Liam, his easy smile, his oblivious trust in his sister, the weight of the footage grew heavier. I could just show him. I could sit him down, press play, and watch the scales fall from his eyes, but it wasn't enough. This wasn't just about proving it to Liam. This was about reclaiming my own sanity in the eyes of his entire family. For years, I had been the oversensitive one, the dramatic one. Jessica had painted me as fragile and neurotic, a narrative her parents, the ever-placid Alan and Martha, had readily accepted. They loved their daughter, and it was easier to believe her version of me than to confront the unpleasantness of her true nature. Showing Liam would fix my marriage, perhaps, but the whispers would remain. It would be my word, and a grainy video, against years of their daughter's carefully constructed image. They would say I provoked her. They would say I edited it. They would find a way to make it my fault. No, I needed to do this in the light. I needed witnesses. I needed to dismantle her lies so completely, so publicly, that there was no room left for doubt. There was only one way to do that. The perfect opportunity was coming up. Liam's parents were hosting their annual post-holiday family dinner that Sunday. It was a command performance. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and of course, Jessica, would all be there. It was the arena where Jessica had so often performed her little character assassinations on me. It was only fitting that it would be the stage for her downfall. My plan began to take shape, cold and precise. I bought a small, powerful projector, the kind that fits in your purse. I tested it in our living room, aiming it at a blank wall, making sure the video file was clear and ready. The grainy, black and white footage of Jessica's crime filled the space, a silent movie of malice. Liam found me in the living room on Saturday night, the projector still on the coffee table. "What's this for?" he asked, picking it up. I had my story ready. "Oh, I was just thinking, we never got to show your parents all the wedding photos. I thought it might be nice to put together a little slideshow for the dinner tomorrow night." His face lit up. It was the most enthusiastic he'd been about anything related to the wedding since the dress incident. "Chloe, that's a great idea. They would love that. It's the perfect way to, move on." The irony was so thick I could taste it. "Exactly," I said, my smile feeling brittle. A way to move on. That night, I barely slept. I lay beside my sleeping husband, my mind racing. Was this the right thing to do? To detonate a bomb in the middle of his family? There would be fallout. There would be pain. Relationships would be irrevocably broken. But then I thought of Jessica's smirk, of Liam's pitying eyes, of the years of feeling small and crazy. This wasn't just about a dress anymore. It was about survival. It was about taking back the story. By morning, my resolve had hardened into steel. I spent hours putting together the slideshow. Happy photos of our childhoods, our first date, our engagement, then dozens of beautiful, professional shots from the wedding, laughing with friends, cutting the cake, our first dance. I was building a monument to the happiness she had tried to tarnish. And at the very end of the file, after the last smiling photo, was the video, my secret weapon, waiting. The Harrison family home was exactly as I always remembered. It, perfectly decorated, smelling faintly of potpourri and old money, and charged with a low-level, unspoken tension. Liam's parents, Alan and Martha, greeted us at the door with warm hugs that never quite reached their eyes. "Chloe, dear, you look lovely," Martha said, her eyes flicking over my simple blue dress. "So nice to see you're feeling better after that unfortunate business at the wedding." She said it as if I'd had a case of the flu, not as if my heart had been ripped out and stomped on. Jessica was holding court by the fireplace, a glass of champagne in her hand. She wore a cream-colored cashmere sweater, the picture of soft, innocent luxury. She saw me and her smile widened. "Chloe, there you are. I was so hoping you'd come." She glided over and gave me a kiss on the cheek. Her skin was cold. "I'm so glad you're not letting that silly dress thing get to you anymore. It's so much better to just let things go, don't you think?" Her audacity was breathtaking. She was testing me, prodding the bruise to see if I'd flinch. I gave her a smile that I hoped looked serene. "You have no idea how ready I am to let things go," I said, my voice sweet. The dinner was its usual ordeal. Talk of golf, stocks, and who was vacationing where. I picked at my roast beef, my stomach in knots. Liam, sitting beside me, was in his element, laughing at his father's jokes, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. He squeezed my hand under the table. "See," he whispered, "this is nice, isn't it?" I just nodded, my heart aching for the peace he was about to lose. After dessert, as everyone was nursing their coffee, I made my move. "Actually," I said, my voice a little louder than usual, causing a few heads to turn, "Liam and I wanted to share something with you all. We were so sad you couldn't all see the professional photos from the wedding. So I put together a little slideshow." A murmur of approval went around the room. "Oh, how wonderful!" Martha exclaimed, clapping her hands together. Liam beamed at me, proud and unsuspecting. "We can set it up on that big wall over there," he said, pointing to the empty space above the sideboard. It took only a few minutes to get the small projector set up on the dining table. I aimed it at the wall, and the first image, a photo of Liam as a gap-toothed kid, appeared. For the next 15 minutes, the room was filled with laughter and fond reminiscences as the photos scrolled by. Pictures of our life together, culminating in the joy of our wedding day. I watched Jessica's face. She was smiling, laughing, along with everyone else, a picture of familial bliss. She had no idea she was watching her own execution. The final photo was one of Liam and me, silhouetted against the sunset, a perfect ending. The screen went black. "That was just beautiful, dear," Alan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much for that," Liam whispered, kissing my temple. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "I'm glad you all enjoyed it," I said, my voice clear and steady. "But there's one more memory from the wedding I'd like to share. A moment I think it's important for everyone to see." A few people looked confused. Liam gave me a questioning glance. I ignored him, my eyes fixed on Jessica. Her smile had faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features. I pressed the play button on my phone, which was connected to the projector. The grainy, black and white footage filled the wall, the silent, empty hallway. The timestamp in the corner read 9:14 p.m. The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint whir of the projector fan. Then, Jessica appeared on the screen. A collective gasp went through the room. I could feel Liam stiffen beside me. I saw his mother Martha lean forward, her hand to her throat. We all watched in stark silence as the ghost on the wall looked furtively up and down the corridor. We watched as my maid of honor, Sarah, appeared and then left. We watched as Jessica pulled a bottle of wine from her purse. I heard a small, choked sound from Jessica's side of the room. Her face had gone ashen, her eyes wide with disbelief and horror. She looked like a trapped animal. The figure on the wall slipped into my bridal suite. The seconds ticked by, each one a hammer blow, in the suffocating silence of the room. Then, she re-emerged, empty-handed, and hurried away. I stopped the video, leaving the image of the empty hallway on the wall. The silence was absolute. It was a living thing, thick and suffocating. No one moved. No one breathed. All eyes darted from the image on the wall to the real Jessica, sitting frozen at the table. She was the first to break. "Bafta, that's not real," she stammered, her voice a high, thin wire of panic. "It's a fake. It's edited. Chloe, you're sick. You did this. You faked this to get back at me." But her denial was pathetic. It was hollow. Everyone in that room had seen it. The furtive glances, the bottle, the stealthy entry. There was no other explanation. The lie was broken. I turned to my husband. Liam was staring at the wall, his face pale, his expression one of dawning, sickening horror. He slowly turned his head, not to his sister, but to me. The pity was gone from his eyes. The frustration was gone. In its place was a look of profound, devastating clarity. He saw it. He finally saw it. And then he looked at his sister. The love and loyalty that had always been there were replaced by something cold and sharp. "Jess," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "How could you?" That was all it took. The dam of her composure broke. A strangled sob escaped her lips. She pushed her chair back violently, stood up, and fled the room. A moment later, we heard the front door slam shut. In the ringing silence she left behind, I stood my ground. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel joy. I felt a vast, empty, and terrible relief. I had my proof. I had my truth, and I had my sanity back. The cost was still to be determined. The drive home was a cocoon of silence. The space between Liam and me was not angry or cold, but fragile, as if we were carrying a priceless, shattered object between us. The engine hummed. The streetlights slid across the windshield, illuminating his face in strobing glimpses. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched on the steering wheel. I didn't know what to say. I had exposed the rot in his family, held it up for everyone to see. I had protected myself, yes, but I had also destroyed his lifelong image of his sister. I waited for him to speak, my own heart a leaden weight in my chest. When we finally pulled into our packing garage and he cut the engine, the silence became absolute. He didn't move, he just stared straight ahead through the windshield. "Why didn't you just show me?" he finally asked, his voice rough. Would you have believed me? I asked softly, turning to face him. Or would you have said it was grainy, that it could be explained away? Would you have confronted her? Or would you have tried to mediate, to smooth it over, to protect her? He flinched, because we both knew the answer. He had a history of protecting her, of making excuses for her. A grainy video, shown in private, would have just become another thing for him to rationalize. He let out a long, shuddering breath, and finally turned to me. His eyes were filled with a pain so deep it stole my breath. It wasn't just anger at Jessica, it was shame. I'm so sorry, Chloe, he whispered, his voice cracking. God, I am so sorry. Tears sprang to my eyes, hot and immediate. Not tears of vindication, but of shared sorrow. I know, I whispered back. All this time, he went on, shaking his head in disbelief. All those little things you mentioned over the years, the comments, the jokes, I just wrote it off. I told myself it was just Jess being Jess. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to believe my own sister could be that. He trailed off, unable to find the word. Vicious, I supplied quietly. Cruel, jealous. He nodded, looking down at his hands. I let you feel like you were crazy. I made you feel like you were the problem. I defended her. Over and over. I defended her, and she was doing that to you. To us. He finally looked up, and the self-recrimination in his eyes was raw. I failed you. As your friend, as your partner, as your husband. I failed you. I reached across the console and took his hand. It was cold and clammy. You didn't fail me, Liam. You were loyal to your sister. I can't fault you for that. But now, I squeezed his hand. Now you see. I see everything, he said, his voice thick. It's like I was colorblind my whole life and I can suddenly see red. It's everywhere. Every memory. It's all tainted now. We sat there for a long time, holding hands, in the dark, the engine ticking as it cooled. It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. The foundations of our new marriage had been rocked, cracked by my public revelation and his dawning, horrifying truth. But in that car, in that shared moment of pain and apology, we laid the first new stone. It wasn't built on blissful ignorance anymore. It was built on a hard, ugly, but undeniable truth. It was a start. The fallout was immediate and messy. Liam's mother, Martha, called him the next morning. I could hear his side of the conversation from the kitchen. It was clipped and firm. No, Mom, I don't want to hear her apology right now. No, this isn't something we can just get over in a week. Yes, Chloe is my wife. She's my priority. We need some space. Martha, it turned out, was less horrified by what Jessica had done and more mortified that I had aired the family's dirty laundry in public. She sent me a long, rambling text message that managed to be both apologetic and accusatory. I am so deeply sorry for what Jessica's jealousy led her to do, Chloe, but I have to be honest. The way you chose to reveal it has caused a schism in this family that may never heal. It was a terribly aggressive way to handle things. I showed the message to Liam. He read it, his jaw tightening, and texted back a simple, brutal reply from his own phone. Her actions caused the schism, Mom, not Chloe's. We won't be discussing this again. Seeing him defend me so unequivocally was a balm on a wound I didn't even realize was still so fresh. Jessica, of course, went into hiding. She sent a barrage of tearful, hysterical texts to Liam, a mix of self-pity and blame. I don't know what came over me. You know how much pressure I was under. Chloe has always had it out. For me, she pushed me to it. How could you let her humiliate me like that? Liam read them, deleted them, and blocked her number. His father, Alan, was the only one who seemed to grasp the true gravity of the situation. He called me directly. His voice was heavy, tired. Chloe, he said, there are no words. I am ashamed. Ashamed of my daughter. And ashamed that I didn't see it sooner. I hope, in time, you can forgive this family for allowing her behavior to go unchecked for so long. It was the closest thing to a true apology I received from his side, and I was grateful for it. The weeks that followed were quiet and insular. Liam and I retreated, creating a bubble for just the two of us. We talked for hours. We went on long walks. We were relearning each other, mapping the new terrain of our relationship. The trust between us was growing back, slowly, but with deeper roots this time. He no longer saw me as a sensitive woman who needed to be managed. But, as a partner whose instincts he could rely on, he started pointing out manipulative behavior in his colleagues, in TV characters, things he'd never have noticed before. He was awake now. I found that the anger I had held onto for so long had mostly dissipated, leaving behind a kind of weary sadness. I hadn't wanted a war. I had just wanted peace. I mourned the sister I could have had, the easy, happy family gatherings that would now forever be a source of tension and division. But I did not regret what I had done. Self-preservation is not a crime. Refusing to be gaslit is not an act of aggression. It's an act of survival. One afternoon, I took the garment bag out of the closet. I unzipped it and looked at the stained and torn dress. For the first time, I didn't feel a surge of rage or grief. I just saw it for what it was: damaged fabric. Her poison had been potent, but it hadn't been fatal. It had hurt me, yes, but it hadn't broken me. A month after the dinner party, I took my wedding dress to the most expensive textile restoration specialist in the city. She was a tiny, older woman with sharp eyes and hands that moved with the reverence of a surgeon. She examined the crimson stain and the jagged tear under a bright light. "The wine we can lift," she said, her accent vaguely Eastern European. "It will be a shadow, perhaps, if you know where to look, a ghost. But we can make it disappear for most eyes." "And the tear?" I asked. She pursed her lips, gently touching the torn edges of the silken lace. "This is harder. This was done with anger. A simple tear, it follows the grain. This is a wound. We can reweave it, yes. We can anchor the beads. It will be strong, but it will leave a scar. There will always be a scar." I looked at her, and a slow smile spread across my face. "A scar is fine," I said. "I think I can live with a scar." Liam and I moved to a new apartment 3 months later. It felt like a fresh start, a space that didn't have the ghost of my investigation haunting its corners. We established new traditions, new boundaries. Sunday dinners with his parents were off the table for the foreseeable future. We saw his father for occasional lunches, but his mother was still keeping a wounded distance. We had heard nothing from Jessica, other than rumors from a cousin that she had taken an extended sabbatical and was traveling. We were fine with that. The silence was a gift. Our life became our own. It was quieter, smaller, but infinitely more authentic. Our marriage wasn't the fairy tale I had imagined on my wedding day. It was something stronger, something realer. It had been tested by fire, and it had not burned away. It had forged. When the dress came back from the restorers, it was beautiful. You had to look closely, in just the right light, to see the faint, silvery line on the hip where the tear had been. The ghost of the stain was completely gone. I didn't try it on. Its purpose had changed. I had a custom shadow, box made, and I folded the dress carefully inside, the lace spilling over the silk. I hung it on the wall in our new bedroom. Liam looked at it, then at me, a question in his eyes. "It's not a memory of a perfect day anymore," I explained, taking his hand. "It's a reminder of what she did." He asked quietly. "No," I said, shaking my head. "It's a reminder of what I did. It's a reminder that I have a voice, that I can trust my own gut, that I will never, ever allow anyone to make me feel crazy again." I looked at the dress, at its faint, beautiful scar. "It's a reminder that I survived." He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. His embrace was solid, sure. It was home. The story wasn't about the dress, or the wine, or the video. It was about the moment I decided to stop whispering my truth and start projecting it onto the wall for everyone to see. The stain was gone, but my sanity was finally, blessedly, pristine. The shadow box on our bedroom wall became a part of the landscape of our life. Some mornings, the light would catch the faint, silvery scar on the dress, and I'd feel a phantom ache of the past. But most days, I barely noticed it. It had done its job. It had been my proof, my validation, and now it was simply a piece of art born from a battle I had won. 2 years passed. 2 years of quiet, deliberate peace. Liam and I built our life in our new apartment, a fortress of trust and inside jokes. His spine, once flexible and accommodating, where his family was concerned, had become steel. He became my fiercest protector, not because I was weak, but because he had finally witnessed the dragon I'd been fighting all along. We saw his father, Alan, for monthly lunches. Our relationship with Martha remained strained, conducted through polite, infrequent phone calls that never touched on the raw, broken thing between us. And Jessica. Jessica was a ghost, an entity. After her dramatic exit and the subsequent flurry of manipulative texts, she had vanished from our lives. We heard through the family grapevine that she had moved to the West Coast, was working for a wellness brand, and was finding herself. It was a punchline Liam and I shared in private. Of course she was finding herself. She'd probably just misplaced the real her. Under layers of deceit, our life was full. My career in graphic design was flourishing, and Liam was on track to make partner at his firm. The love between us was no longer the bright, naive flame of our wedding day. It was deeper, a slow-burning ember that warmed us from the inside out. We were happy, truly, deeply, peacefully happy. It was a happiness I had fought for, and I cherished it with a ferocity that surprised even me. One cool October evening, curled up on the sofa with takeout containers and a bottle of wine, Liam brought up the future. I was looking at listings today, he said, his voice casual, but I saw the hopeful glint in his eye. Houses, with yards, for a dog, and maybe other things. My heart did a little flip. We had talked about it, of course, a house, a family. But it had always been a vague, distant dream. Hearing him bring it into the present, into our living room, made it feel real, possible. Other things? I asked. Playing coy things that need their own bedrooms, he said, his smile widening. Things that call you mom. I leaned over and kissed him. A long, slow kiss, full of promises. The future felt bright and expansive, a clean, white canvas waiting for us to paint it. We were safe in our bubble. The past was locked away, or so I thought. The next day, my phone rang. It was Alan. His voice sounded strained, older than it had just a few weeks ago at our last lunch. Chloe, he said, and I could hear the hesitation. I have some news, and I wanted you to hear it from me before your mother-in-law gets involved. I sat down, a cold knot of dread forming in my stomach. What is it, Alan? There was a pause, a heavy sigh. It's Jessica, he said. She's back. She moved back to the city this weekend. The bubble didn't just pop, it shattered. And just like that, the ghost was back at the feast. The news of Jessica's return landed like a stone in the calm waters of our life. That night, the easy comfort between Liam and me was replaced by a familiar tension. It wasn't a tension with each other, but with the world outside our door. The past we had so carefully boxed up and put on the wall was suddenly, somehow, back in the room with us. We don't have to see her, Liam said immediately, his face set in stone. We were in the kitchen, and he was gripping the counter so hard his knuckles were white. Her being in the same city changes nothing. The boundary stands. No contact, I know, I said, and I did. I trusted him. But my body remembered the anxiety before my mind could catch up. My heart was beating a little too fast. My palms were slick with a nervous sweat I hadn't felt in years. It's just the shock, I guess. It felt like that chapter was over, closed, done. It is done, he insisted, walking over and pulling me into his arms. His embrace was the same solid fortress it had become, and I leaned into it, grateful. She has no power over us anymore, Chloe, none. His words were true, but they couldn't stop the inevitable. The next day, the calls from Martha began. She didn't call Liam, she called me. It was a calculated move, an attempt to position herself as my ally, a fellow woman trying to mend a broken family. It was transparently manipulative. Chloe, dear, she began, her voice dripping with a saccharine sweetness that set my teeth on edge. I know this must be a bit of a surprise, but Jessica is back, and she has changed. Truly, she's been in intensive therapy. For 2 years, she's done so much work on herself. She is filled with a remorse that is it's humbling to witness. I remained silent, letting her talk. I wasn't the same woman who used to stammer and try to please her. She wants to make amends, Martha continued, her voice taking on a pleading tone. She wants to apologize to you, face to face, to take full responsibility. All I'm asking is for you to consider a meeting, a coffee, just to hear her out, for the sake of this family. For the sake of this family. The old weapon, polished and brought out of the armory, the guilt trip, the implication that I, by refusing to absolve her daughter, was the one keeping the family broken. Martha, I said, my voice calm and even. It was a voice I had practiced in my head 1,000 times, for a day I hoped would never come. I appreciate you calling me directly. But my position, and Liam's, hasn't changed. We're happy Jessica is getting help. We wish her well. But we have no interest in a meeting. But Chloe, our peace is not up for negotiation, I said, cutting her off cleanly. I have to go now. Have a lovely day. I hung up before she could respond. My hand was shaking, but my heart was steady. I had held the line. But I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this was just the first wave of the assault. I managed to avoid her for 2 full weeks. One screened Martha's calls. I politely declined a last-minute invitation to a small family get-together. And I generally kept my head down. I was beginning to hope that they might actually get the message. It was a foolish hope. I was at a small bookstore cafe in a neighborhood I rarely visited, doing research for a new branding project. It was my sanctuary, a place of quiet and anonymity. I was so absorbed in a book on vintage typography that I didn't see her until she was standing right beside my table. Chloe. The voice was softer than I remembered, stripped of its usual sharp, sarcastic edge. But it was hers. I looked up slowly, my entire body tensing. It was Jessica. She looked different. Her flashy, designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple linen dress. Her makeup was minimal. Her hair, once perfectly coiffed, was pulled back in a loose, unassuming bun. It was a costume, I realized instantly. The role she was playing today was the penitent woman. Jessica, I said, my voice flat. I didn't smile. I didn't invite her to sit. I know I'm the last person you want to see, she began, wringing her hands in a gesture that was just a little too theatrical. And I know my mother has probably been calling you. I told her not to. This is something I have to do myself. She took a deep breath. I wanted to find you, to look you in the eye, and to offer you my most profound and sincere apology. There are no excuses for what I did. It was monstrous. I was coming from a place of deep insecurity and pain, and I lashed out at you because you had the happiness I thought I wanted. It was my issue, my poison, and I am so deeply sorry that I hurt you with it. It was a perfect speech. It hit all the right notes. It used all the right therapy words. My pain, my issue, making amends. The old me would have been swayed. The old me, desperate for any acknowledgement of the truth, would have wept with relief. But I wasn't the old me. I looked at her, truly looked past the costume and the rehearsed words, and I saw it. In her eyes it was the same flicker I'd seen in the bridal suite all those years ago. It wasn't triumph this time. It was expectation. She was waiting for her reward. She had delivered the apology, and now she was waiting to be absolved, to be let back in. She hadn't changed. She had just gotten a better script. Thank you for your apology, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I closed the book on my table. I accept that you've said it. It was a careful, deliberate choice of words. I wasn't accepting the apology itself. I was simply acknowledging the act of its delivery. Her smile faltered. This wasn't the reaction the script had promised. Oh, she said, well, good. I was hoping maybe we could talk more sometime. I'd love to rebuild, if you'd let me. I stood up, slinging my bag over my shoulder. I looked her directly in the eye. Jessica, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I wish you peace. I hope you find the happiness you're looking for. But my life is not a part of your recovery process. The door you closed that day is going to stay closed. I walked away without looking back, leaving her standing alone in the quiet cafe. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Her power, her games, her manipulations, they could no longer touch me. I had built my own peace, and she wasn't invited inside. When I told Liam about the encounter at the bookstore, he went through a series of emotions. First, white-hot anger that she had tracked me down, that she had ambushed me. Then, an immense wave of pride. She wanted absolution, I explained, pacing our living room as I recounted the conversation. She didn't want to be forgiven. She wanted a key. A key to get back into the family, back into the fold. She thinks saying the magic words, I'm sorry, entitles her to have everything go back to the way it was. And you didn't give it to her, he said, his voice full of awe. Chloe, that's incredible. You were stronger than I could have ever been in that moment. I learned from the best, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. I had a good teacher in how to set boundaries. It was true. His unwavering support for the past 2 years had been my training ground. We were a team. The encounter, however, opened the floodgates. Martha's campaign escalated. She moved from pleading to guilt. The calls became more frequent, more desperate. Chloe is being unreasonable. Liam, Jessica is trying so hard, and she's shutting her out. It's cruel, she lamented to him over the phone. Liam was a rock. Mom, he said, his voice dangerously calm, you are going to stop this. Now. Chloe does not owe Jessica forgiveness on a timeline. She doesn't owe her forgiveness at all. Her only obligation is to her own well-being, which your daughter tried to destroy. This conversation is over. Do not call either of us about this again. He hung up, and the apartment was silent. We both knew that a final, irreparable line had been drawn. The fantasy of a happy, reunited family was dead and buried. In its place was a stark, clear reality. It was us, and it was them. The final test came a month later, and it was the one I had been dreading most. Alan had a heart attack. The call came from a frantic Martha in the middle of the night. It was mild, the doctor said. He was stable, he would recover. But it was the ultimate emotional weapon, and Martha wielded it with precision. He's asking for his children, Liam. She sobbed into the phone. He needs both his children, please. Can you just put everything aside for your father? Jessica is already on her way to the hospital. Please, just come. Here it was, the unavoidable, moral checkmate. We couldn't refuse to go. We loved Alan, but we knew what awaited us there. A hospital waiting room, thick with fear and forced proximity, the perfect stage for the final act of Martha's play of reconciliation. We'll go, I said to Liam, my voice more resolute than I felt. We'll go for your dad, but we go on our terms. Together. He nodded, his face grim. We were heading back into the dragon's den. But this time, we were going together, with our eyes wide open. The hospital waiting room was a sterile, beige box of anxiety. Martha and Jessica were huddled together on a small sofa when we arrived, their heads closed. They looked up as we approached, and Martha's face flooded with relief. Jessica's was a mask of somber, pleading sorrow. It was another costume, the grieving daughter. Oh, Liam, thank you for coming, Martha said, rushing to hug him. She then turned to me, her arms open. I did not step forward. I gave her a small, polite nod. How is he? Liam asked, his voice all business. He's sleeping now. The doctors say the prognosis is good, but he got such a fright, Martha said, dabbing at her dry eyes. She gestured to the empty chairs beside Jessica. Please, sit. We did not. Liam and I remained standing, a united front near the door. We asked the necessary questions about the doctor's report, about Alan's condition, about the treatment plan. We kept the conversation focused, impersonal, and strictly on the health of his father. Jessica watched us, her big, sad eyes following my every move. She tried to catch my eyes several times, to offer me a watery, penitent smile. I ignored her completely. I looked at the wall, at my phone, at Liam. To her, I made myself a ghost. I was present, but I was not available to her. The tension was suffocating. After an hour, a nurse announced we could go in, 2 at a time. Jessica, you and Liam should go first, Martha said immediately. He's been asking for you both. Liam looked at me, a silent question. I gave him a subtle nod. This was about Alan. He went. I was left alone with Martha. She seized the opportunity. Chloe, she said, her voice a low, urgent whisper. Please, look at her. She is destroyed by what she did. Life is too short for this kind of hatred. Can you not find it in your heart to forgive her? For Alan? For this family? I turned to face my mother. My heart wasn't pounding. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a profound and immense calm. Martha, I said, my voice soft but unyielding, I don't hate your daughter. To hate her, I would have to think about her, and I don't. What I have for her is a complete and total absence of feeling. I held her gaze. And forgiveness? Forgiveness is something you give to someone who is sorry for what they did. Jessica is only sorry she got caught. There is a difference. Martha stared at me, speechless. The truth of my words, spoken so plainly, without anger, seemed to finally penetrate the layers of her denial. She saw that I wasn't a hysterical girl anymore. I was a woman who knew her own mind. When Liam and Jessica came out, Alan's doctor was with them. He gave us a positive update and said Alan was awake and asking for me. As I walked towards his room, Jessica stepped into my path. Chloe, can we just talk for 1 minute? She pleaded. This was it, the final confrontation. Liam stepped forward, ready to intervene, but I put a hand on his arm. I could handle this. There's nothing to talk about, Jessica, I said. Yes, there is, she insisted. her voice cracking, the polished veneer finally showing a flaw. I apologized. I did the therapy. I'm doing everything right. Why won't you just let it go? And there it was. The truth of her heart. It wasn't about remorse. It was about her own frustration. It was about me not following the script she had written for my forgiveness. I looked her in the eye, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't indifference. It was pity. Because you think forgiveness is something you're entitled to, I said quietly. You think it's a transaction, but it's not. It's a gift. And it's a gift I'm choosing to keep for myself. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go see my father-in-law. I stepped around her and walked down the hall without looking back, leaving her standing there in the beige, sterile hallway, finally silenced by a truth she could not manipulate. Alan recovered quickly. Liam and I visited him every day, sometimes coordinating with Martha and Jessica, most times going on our own. A strange, unspoken truce settled over the family. We could exist in the same room, we could be civil, but the deep, foundational crack was still there. We had simply learned how to walk around it. 6 months after Alan's health scare, Liam and I bought a house. It had a big, sprawling yard and enough bedrooms for other things. As we packed up our apartment, I took the shadow box containing my wedding dress off the wall. I paused, looking at the restored fabric, the faint, silvery scar. It was no longer a symbol of a battle. It was a statement of fact, a declaration. It represented the moment I had chosen myself. The moment I had refused to be a character in someone else's drama. It was the story of how I had built my own peace, not by fighting, but by learning to simply, and finally, close the door. Liam came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his eyes on the dress. Are we taking that with us? He asked softly. Of course, I said, leaning back against him. It's our foundation. He smiled, understanding completely. It wasn't a reminder of the worst day of our lives. It was a reminder of the first day of our real life. The day we had started to build something stronger than silken lace. Something that no stain, no tear, and no person could ever ruin. We were taking it with us. A silent guardian for the bright, expansive future that was waiting. A future that was entirely and beautifully our own.